because they're not ready. Okay, אתה מוכן לרב? אתה מוכן לרב? Told me not to start. Welcome everyone. Yes, this is loud. To Harav Ginsburgh's monthly English shiur. We need just a few minutes to organize here, but I'll announce it now, and I'll announce it later also, that next month, even though we always try our hardest to have the shiur on the first Sunday of the Loazi calendar, June 1st, which is the first Sunday of July, is the fast day of Yud Zayin B'Tammuz. So for those in Chutz La'aretz, it probably would not affect people all that much. It's still the morning. But here in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, it's actually at the end of the fast, and it might make it very difficult for the Rav and many of the people who come here to schlep out on a fast day, and then we won't have food to break the fast, and so it's difficult. So we're moving it to the second Sunday in July. So everyone should mark your calendars, July 8th. I believe it's Chaf Hei Tammuz, I believe. So everyone mark your calendars, we'll announce it again. And I believe we're ready for the shiur.
Yesh koach. Hello to everyone here and around the world. Last month we began a topic, a very important topic in ethics, which is called value theory. And we were in the middle of it. We began constructing what we refer to as a parzuf, which is a model of 10 sfirot. That each sfirah corresponds to one aspect of the topic that we're dealing with. So last month we actually reached the dot. We finished the three heads of the keter of the crown in relation to goodness, to value, together with the three intellectual faculties of the soul, which are wisdom and understanding and knowledge. So today what we have to continue with are the 7 midot, the 7 emotive attributes. Now each one has a specific meaning in value theory. But value theory is about what is good. Obviously the Torah has a lot to say about what is good, because the Torah is good, and Tov Ela Torah, good is the Torah itself. Hashem is good. A famous saying of the sages we quoted last time that says, Yavo good, may good come, and receive good from good for good. May good come as Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, that when he was born, he appeared as good. The whole room became full of light. So may good come and receive good. The Torah is good, from good. God is good, the giver of the Torah is good, to good. The souls of Israel are good. Each one has a verse in the Torah to prove that it is good, ultimate good. We spoke about 2 types of good, intrinsic good and extrinsic good, meaning essential good, good in and of itself, and good for. that something is good for something. We talked about another two terms in English which have the corresponding Hebrew terms for them, which are value versus virtue. In Hebrew, we didn't explain last time the Hebrew terms for these two very important words. Value is erech. Today it's going to be important that we contemplate these words in Hebrew. Erech, ayin reish chav, whoever knows how to spell Hebrew. If you calculate the gematria of that word erech, so it equals 290. We'll go on to explain what that number signifies. The corresponding word for virtue, these are two words that even in the dictionary it's not so clear what is the distinction, the differentiation between these two terms. In Hebrew, a virtue is a ma'ala. That's the way it's translated. Ma'ala is mem ayin lamed hey. And it comes from the word alo, which is something which is elevated, something which is high. Something, in our context, it means something which is virtuous. So we have these two pillars of morality, of ethics, virtue and value. How much does the word in Hebrew virtue equal? 145. What is the relationship or the ratio between erech, which is value, and ma'ala, which is virtue? Erech is 290 and virtue is 145. What's the ratio? The ratio is exactly 2 to 1. Because erech is 2 times ma'ala. It's a very important ratio in the Torah in general, especially in Kabbalah, especially the great medieval Kabbalist by the name of Abulafia. It's one of his most important concepts. He calls it whole and half, a relation of whole and half. Very often the whole half relationship is male-female. But it's not always clear who the male is and who the female is. If the male is the whole and the female is the half, or vice versa. In our context, if we want to give it a male-female relationship, so the concept of value, erech, is the female, and the concept of virtue, relatively, is the male. Everything is all relative. Each one contains both facets in himself. The corresponding terms in Kabbalah, which are much easier to picture, are or and kli. Or and kli is light and vessel. Every light has to have a vessel to enter. Every vessel has to have a light. Sometimes light and vessel is like soul and body. Throughout the Zohar, the relation of light and vessel, or soul and body, is also a male-female relationship. That the soul is called Abraham, and the body, the vessel, is called Sarah. Is throughout the whole Sefer HaZohar, the original pair of male and female in the Torah. Which is more valuable? So obviously the value is more valuable. One might think initially that light is more important than vessel, but light without vessel is called the world of chaos. It doesn't exist, it doesn't continue to exist. It momentarily enters reality, but then breaks, vanishes from reality. That which holds it, gives it continued existence is the vessel. The vessel is called rectification. We're taught that the origin, the spiritual origin of the vessels is higher than the origin of the lights themselves. So once more we have here on our corresponding ethical terminology, which is virtue versus value, and we're saying that virtue versus value is like light in correspondence and contrast to vessel. How do I know that the woman is the most valuable thing in the world? It's a verse that every husband says to his wife before making Kiddush on the Shabbos. Eshet chayamim tzavurachot mipnei mira, a woman of value who can find, and her worth is more precious than pearls. It means that she is the most valuable thing in the world. Not just for the husband is she the most valuable thing, but in general she represents value. The husband has to be virtuous. Another corresponding pair of terms, which is like virtue and value, which is called ma'ala and erech, is heaven and earth. Also like soul and body. Heaven is above. We said that the word for virtue comes from the root above, elevated, ma'ala. So virtue is heavenly. Value is earthly. In Hebrew, a very interesting phenomenon is that there's no feminine form for an angel. Angels are exclusively male, malach. As soon as you put a hey at the end of the word angel, which makes it a feminine grammatical form, it turns into something else altogether. It turns into melacha, which means work. When an angel comes down to earth, she begins to work hard. It's like the Lametet, the 39 categories of work on Shabbos. So once more, men should strive to be heavenly. Women are the anchor. The woman is the anchor of the man that makes sure that he remains on earth. That's the once more virtue versus value. So once more, I would think initially maybe that virtue is much better than value, but now we see that it's not so clear. Because value is twice the value of virtue. That's what the Gematria demonstrates. Meaning that even in the concept of good for, which is called extrinsic good in philosophy, there is some higher source even than intrinsic good, which is good by itself. If we once more compare this to a male-female relationship, so good for is like the sages say, En isha ela leyofi, that a woman is for beauty. Or they say, En isha ela lebanim, that a woman is for children. So does that make the woman less than the man because she's for something? No. It's more, there's something about being for something that maybe can even be more, the word in Hebrew is taktis, more purposeful. One of the essential things about our Torah is that there is purpose to creation. And if the purpose of creation is to have as many children as possible, so the one that fulfills that purpose is the woman. En isha ela lebanim. So this is the way we're now entering the topic today. that we have our pillar of virtue and pillar of value, which is in Hebrew one's from ma'ala and erech. Now about this word erech, which means a value, there's a whole tractate in the Talmud which is called Masechet Erechim, the tractate of values, because there's a very special law that's written in the Torah that actually read a few weeks ago in our Torah reading, that every human being has an explicit value, that if a person makes a vow that he is going to contribute the value of this particular person to the temple. So every person has a value in accordance with his gender and his age. Which means that there's something about the value in the Torah which is something in between what we call value and virtue. Because if the value would just be pure value, then I would have to take the person to what's called shuk shel avadim, to a market of slaves, and see how much he is worth in the market. But you don't take him to the market and appraise his worth. You simply have to look at his birth certificate. That's all. Purely, and there's something intrinsic about one's value simply based upon one's age and one's gender. I mean, that there's some virtue within value, as we actually did mention last time, that each of these two pillars of goodness are inter-included, that each one has both of them in itself. And here we see a case of something virtuous within simply value. Value is money. How much you have to contribute when you say that erech, that the value of that person is on me to give to the temple. We'll relate a very famous story that one of the greatest Hasidim in Chabad, his name is Rabbi Hillel of Paritch. And when he was a young man, he was not yet connected to the Rebbe's of Chabad. He was actually a Chassid of Chernobyl, another branch of Hasidus. But when he, for the first time, tasted the sweetness of the teachings of Chabad, he wanted to come in and connect to the first Rebbe of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe. But the divine providence made it so that he was unable to ever see the first Rebbe, even though he went after him. He was traveling at that time. But every city that he reached, which was on the itinerary of the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe already had left. So he thought, what can I do? So he knew that he's about to reach a certain destination, a certain city, and he said, I'm going to get there first before he comes. And I'm going to enter secretly into the room in the hotel, wherever he's staying. And I'm going to hide there under the bed. And as soon as he walks in, I'm going to jump out of the bed, because he was desperate that he has to see the Rebbe. And just like all the great disciples of times on oath did for the first time that they came to a Rebbe, to a mentor, to a teacher, they prepared some question that they had in their Torah study. And at that time, Rabbi Hillel, this young man, was studying this tractate in the Talmud, which is called the Tractate of Values, Masechet Erechim. So he prepared a very, very deep question that he had to ask the Alter Rebbe the first time that he meets him. So he actually did as he said, as we said just before, that he reached that place that the Alter Rebbe is about to come, And he entered the inn and he hid under the bed. And the Alter Rebbe, when he walked in to the room, so he walked slowly. And one of the things about the first Rebbe, about the Alter Rebbe in the Balatanya, is referred to by his classic work that he wrote, which is called the Tanya, that he never would just simply speak as all of us speak. He would only sing. All of his, even mundane speech, like how are you, or please make me a coffee, it was all in song. He never spoke normally. So he walks into the room, and in his traditional song, he sings a younger man, a young man, who has a question in Erchin, in this tractate of values. First, he must evaluate himself. Shiur. As Rabbeinu was hiding under the bed, about to jump out and ask him the question, which obviously he had prepared, but nobody in the world knew he had prepared this particular question from this particular tractate. When he heard those words, so he fainted on the spot. Obviously, the Alter Rebbe knew that he had fainted under the bed, but that didn't bother him. Again, he was in tune with the divine providence. And by the time that he woke up from his faint, the Alter Rebbe had already left that city. So that was the last attempt that he made to see the Alter Rebbe. But at least he heard him. Apparently what he heard, those words that he heard, that remained with him his whole life. He became totally connected to the son of the Alter Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad. It's called the Middle Rebbe, the Middle Rebbe. So we see that a very basic foundation of our service of Hashem is the ability to evaluate yourself, not just learn this tractate of values, but apply it first and foremost to yourself. You evaluate yourself. Last time we spoke about one of the great sages. His name is Rabbi Tarfon. The only sage whose name equals Moses. Moses, when he was born, it says that he was good, as we said before. And not only that, his name begins with a tet, which is the initial letter of good, of tov, and also the root of the name equals tov squared. Tov is 17 squared. All of this we discussed last time. What's special about this particular sage? So today we're going to discuss another great sage. Actually a generation or a half a generation before. One of the 5 great disciples of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai was considered the first generation of the Tanaim, of the Mishnah, and his 5 disciples are considered already to be the second generation of the Tanaim. These 5 disciples we read about this just yesterday on Shabbat in Pirkei Avot. We read the tractate called The Ethics of the Fathers, and yesterday we read the second chapter, and that's where these 5 sages are quoted. First it says that Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai had his 5 disciples, and then it says how he referred, how he praised each one of his 5 disciples. And when it reaches the last of the 5, his name is Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. So he says that Rabbi Elazar ben Arach is K'ma'ayan HaMitkaber. He's like a fountain that is ever flowing, expanding, and in strength. Ma'ayan HaMitkaber, that's the term in Hebrew. Then he goes on to ask his 5 disciples, Ezoi derech tova sheyidbak baha adam, what is the good way that every man should cling to? And each one said something else. When it came to the 5th, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, so he said that the good way that we should all strive and aspire to reach in our life is lev tov, a good heart. So actually, this directly applies to the beginning of the class we had last month, because then it was in the middle of Sfirat Omer, the counting of the Omer, and we said that there are 49 days of the Omer, and the 49, 7 times 7, so the 7 attributes of the heart, each includes all of them. That equals the term lev tov, a good heart. That's why the objective of our rectification of the attributes of this 49 particular attributes of Shirat Omer is to reach a good heart. At the end of the class last time, somebody asked, I did it, but I didn't yet reach a good heart. But obviously the objective is a good heart. So at that point, we should already have mentioned this sage, but we left it to today, that the one who says that the good heart is the ultimate good way of life, more so than the good eye and the good friend and the good neighbor, and seeing the future. Those are the 4 other opinions of what is the good way. Becomes Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, and he says that the good way is simply a good heart. How did the mentor, the Rebbe Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, respond? He responded that Ro'eh ani et divrei Elazar ben Arach b'divreichem shebichlal dvarav divreichem. So that I see as most correct the words of my disciple Elazar ben Arach, more so than all of your opinions, all of your words, because all of your words are contained within his word. And so all of the other good attributes of what it means to be good is all contained within the concept of a good heart. What is special about his name? There are other sages who share together with him the first name, which is Elazar. There's Elazar, there are many Elazars. There are also many Eliezers, which is a cousin name of Elazar. But what's special, in order to differentiate between all of the Elazars, you have to add the name of the father. Otherwise we wouldn't know what the difference is. So what's special about this particular Elazar is that he's Elazar ben Arach, and his father's name is Arach, Ayin Reish Chav, which is the same word as Erech, as value. Is there anybody else in the whole Talmud whose name comes from the word value? No. There's no such name. It's a totally unique name. It appears not. There's no such name in the written Bible, which is the Tanakh, and there's no such name in the oral Torah, which is the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Midrash, and everything. A totally unique name, Arach, which is the word Erech. Literally, his name reads Elazar ben Arach, that the word ben means son, Elazar, the son of Arach. But very often in Hasidut, a name is interpreted that word ben does not just mean son of, but it comes from the word lahavin. Ben is lahavin, which means to understand. So according to that reading of Elazar ben Arach, this particular sage is the ultimate, the quintessential understander of value. That's the most amazing thing, that we have Elazar ben Arach, that he more than any other sage understands value, the value of value. And he is the one that says that the ultimate value, the ultimate good way, is the good heart. There are many very important stories about Rabbi Elazar ben Arach that perhaps we'll tell, if we have time, we'll tell in the continuation. Different things about this sage. There's one important thing to say is that the first of the 5 disciples, his name is Rabbi Eliezer. It's called Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol, the great Rabbi Eliezer. His father's name is Hyrcanus. And the last of the 5 is our Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. So once more, the names are similar, Eliezer and Elazar. The Mishnah that we read yesterday in Shabbat says that first Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai said that all the wise sages of Israel are put on the scales on one side, and Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, the first, is put on the other side of the scale. He will outweigh all of them. But then comes another disciple, not one of the 5, someone else. His name is Abba Shaul. And he says, in the name of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, he said, I heard, what it means that I heard myself from Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, the mentor, that if all of the wise sages of Israel put on the scales on one side, together with Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, he's also there on one side, and Elazar ben Arach on the other side, he will outweigh all of them. So how can this contradiction be reconciled? How can it be that he said these two seemingly different and contradictory things about who is the greatest of his disciples? So the way it's explained in Chassidut, actually the Rebbe explains this at length, that these two, the first and the last, represent the Tzaddik Gamur and the Baal Tshuva. The consummate righteous soul versus the returnee to God. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus is the tzaddik, and so from that perspective of a consummate righteous soul, he outweighs all of them. But from the perspective of a returner, a returnee to God, Elazar ben Arach outweighs them all, including the great tzaddik Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. As the Chazal teach us that in the place of the Baal Tshuva, a returner stands, the tzaddik Amor cannot reach his place. Why he is referred to as a Baal Tshuva, we have to tell our whole story. That again, we'll leave that if we have time at the end. If we don't have time, then maybe somebody will ask. But the story is why he is a Baal Tshuva. But he is Baal Tshuva. And that Baal Tshuva, he understands value better than anyone. Perhaps he doesn't understand virtue better than anyone, but value he understands better than anyone. At the end you can... Sure, I just felt bad.
Okay. We're talking about virtue and value, and I realized I was meant to dedicate this shiur as an aliyat to neshama, so I felt lacking of a good heart. So, you'll pardon me. This shiur is dedicated to an aliyat to neshama for Rabbi Yitzchak Eliezer, talking about Eliezer, Ben Yehuda Leib Halevi. Should have an aliyat to neshama. I'm sorry I interrupted.
So after this introduction of our two pillars of virtue and value, and also this particular stage that we're going to discuss more, Elazar ben Arach. And now let's turn to try to complete the parzuf, the model of all of the different sfirot in relation to value and goodness. So as we said, we completed all of the three heads of the crown and the three intellectual faculties of the soul, and now we're beginning with chesed, with the first property of the heart itself. So obviously good is a good heart, and today we're actually discussing the different attributes of the heart. The first two are a pair. They're called chesed and gvura, loving kindness and might. Might means contraction also. Might implies that the loving kindness principle has to be balanced. That you have to, but at the same time you have to know there's something about might that actually has more mind power in it than even the principle of loving kindness, because you have to know how to balance properly your giving. That's called the right hand and the left hand, both coming from the two sides of the heart. The right side of the heart extends and expresses itself in the right hand, which is the giving hand. That's loving kindness. The left side of the heart extends and expresses itself in the left hand, which is the hand that a little bit pushes away. The term in Chazal is smol dochav yamin mikarevet, that the left hand pushes away, and the right, at the same time, the right hand embraces and brings near and gives. As emotions of the heart, those are love and fear that also must balance one another, and they function together as the two, it's called the two wings, the two hands in a bird are the two wings. Without which, possessing both wings, he cannot fly upward. Last time we explained that one of the reasons that we're devoting several classes now, last time and this time, and most likely the time to come, is because we're trying to reach out to the whole world, meaning the non-Jewish world. And in order to reach out and to communicate properly, we're taught you have to find some common denominator. So we said that the common denominator of all cultures of mankind around the earth are basic ethical concepts. And there's much similarity, and obviously there are fine differences, that sometimes a fine difference can be very, very significant. But first we have to try to understand what are the similarities in all cultures. One thing that we said last time is that every culture has something which is similar to what is called the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule in the Torah was expressed by two great sages, first by Hillel HaZaken and then by Rabbi Akiva. A potential convert came to Hillel and said, "Teach me the whole Torah on 1 foot." Shammai, he first came to Shammai, and Shammai pushed him away. The left hand pushes away. But then he came to Hillel, and Hillel's the right hand that he embraced him and brought him near. And he said, if you want to know the whole Torah on 1 foot, what you hate, don't do to your friend. That's the whole Torah on 1 foot. The rest is simply commentary. Go and learn. 2-3 generations later comes Rabbi Akiva, the great pillar of the oral Torah. And he says that V'ahavta re'acha kamo, he quotes a verse from the Torah that also we read several weeks ago, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. This is the klal gadol b'Torah. This is the great principle of the Torah. So they both said something very similar. Both of these phrases are referred to as the golden rule. In different cultures, some say it in the negative, like Hillel, and some say it in the positive, like Rabbi Akiva. But in our tradition, Lahavdil, the Tova, we have both expressions. First, a negative expression, what you hate, don't do it to your friend. Why so? Hillel is the right hand, as we said before. He was embracing him. Right is positive. Why did the positive side of Hillel say it in a negative phraseology? The simple reason is, once more, he's talking to his mentality. This is yet a non-Jew is coming to convert. Why did Shammai push him away? Because he thought he was having chutzpah to say, teach me the whole Torah on one foot. Certainly was coming with some gvura, some might, which is not yet refined and rectified. But nonetheless, Hillel knew that this is a potential true convert, and that's why he embraced him. And he said he talked his language. You have to know how to talk the other person's language. And he said that the whole Torah on one foot is what you hate, don't do it to anybody else. That's the whole thing. And the rest is commentary. Rabbi Akiva is a balance to this itself, because he himself is the son of a convert. He comes from converts. Converts relatively are the left. But he says it, he simply quotes a verse from the Torah, which is the most positive of all the positive commandments, is the most positive of them all, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And he says, this is the great principle, klal gadol. The very word great in Kabbalah is always identified with chesed, with kindness. Kindness is called greatness. Abraham, the pillar of kindness, called the Adam HaGadol Ba'anakim, the great giant. So once more, first Hillel said it in the negative phraseology, and then comes Rabbi Akiva and says it in the positive. Relative to one another, these two expressions correspond to Chesed and Gvura. To the first two, an all-inclusive attributes of the heart. To say that you shall love, in the verse of Rabbi Akiva, the first and most important word is love. In the phraseology of Hillel, it's hate, the very opposite. He says, you shall love, the Torah says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, added, mamash, absolutely as yourself. That your neighbor and the love for your neighbor is absolutely as your love for yourself. That's the commandment of the Torah. That's absolute right, absolute chesed in reference to this klal gadol, this great principle of the Torah. As we said, the greatness is chesed. But to say that think about what you hate, and what you hate, make sure that you don't do that to anyone else, to your friend. That's a sensitivity of, obviously it's goodness, but it's goodness as a sensitivity of the left, of Buddha. There are certain philosophers, both ancient philosophers and modern philosophers, non-Jewish philosophers, that ask the question, they like to try to find flaws in everything. And the flaw that they try to find in the Golden Rule, once more, the Golden Rule is something universal. Historically, who said it first is a question. But the Torah is definitely one of the oldest documents that it says, "V'ahavta re'acha kamocha." What is the flaw that the philosophers try to find in this, in the Golden Rule? Maybe what you hate, your friend likes. What does it mean? What you hate, don't do to your friend. Maybe that's his favorite. Maybe you hate that food. Maybe that's his favorite food. Is that a real flaw in the Golden Rule? There's a phrase that says, "Al tam v'al en litvakeach." On taste and smell, odor, there's nothing to argue about. Everybody's individual. So how can we make an all-inclusive generalization that whatever you hate, make sure not to do it to anybody else? So first of all, this will now give us more insight why in the Torah tradition the negative phraseology was pronounced several generations before the simple positive, because the simple positive is simply quoting a verse from the Torah. Just the addition is that this verse from the Torah is the greatest all-inclusive principle of the Torah. Klal Gadol b'Torah. As we said, we're taught in Kabbalah that there's something more mindful in Gvura on the left, that you know when not to let your native good feelings express themselves, because sometimes it can be bad, can have bad results, than in simply the pure will of every good soul to be benevolent to the maximum. Included, but deeply, this way it's explained, that included deeply within what you hate is also the individuality of you hating certain things. A friend does like them. But what you hate is somebody doing to you something which you don't like. So in order to understand that, you have to be able to, as it were, put yourself into the mind or into the heart of your friend, and don't do to him something that he doesn't like. That's the deep reading of what you hate. It's not just the objects that you don't like, it's that somebody does to you something which you do not like, which hurts you, which harms you as an individual. Once more, that is not clear in the positive expression of you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So that's why that's one reason that the negative terminology has to precede the positive terminology. Just as in the phrase that we quoted before from Chazal, always should the left push away and the right bring close. It's very often the motion of the left must precede the motion of the right. The purpose is to reach the right. But in order that it should be done properly and balanced, it first has to begin with the mindfulness, the additional mindfulness of the left. Right, so these two readings of the Golden Rule in the Torah were not identifying with Chesed and Gvurah, the first two of the attributes of the heart. Afterwards comes Tiferet. Tiferet is beauty. So this itself is very, very clear how this relates to value theory. Because in value theory itself, there are different values which are believed by different philosophers to be the one primary intrinsic value. Last time we discussed two of them, pleasure, the pleasure principle, and knowledge. But there's a third. The third is beauty. Many philosophers believe in aesthetics, that the aesthetic principle, the principle of beauty aesthetic, is the monistic, it's called, as we explained last time, the one primary value in the world. If we said before that any sha'ar liyofi, that a woman is for beauty, it means that she is not just she's for this, but if she's beautiful, she manifests the ultimate intrinsic value of the world. So actually last time we did say, I believe, if I remember properly, that this is an example of an intrinsic value which also has a purpose, which is also consequential as the term in philosophy. That you might think that an intrinsic value is not necessarily purposeful, but it can be an intrinsic value and also have purpose. What is the purpose of beauty? The purpose of beauty is procreation. So on the one hand, it's intrinsic. On the other hand, it's also extrinsic insofar as it is a necessary condition for procreation. How do I know that beauty is good? In Hebrew, one of the 8 synonyms for beauty is good. We light on Hanukkah 8 candles. Each one of the candles represents a different form of beauty. And there are 8 different synonyms in Hebrew for beauty. The third of which is simply good, the word good. How do I know, where do I find in the Torah that beauty is good? The very beginning of the Torah, way long before the word beauty, the simple word for beauty is yafeh in Hebrew, yofi. But long before that word appears in the Torah, already in the 4th verse of creation of Genesis, we read Vayal Elokim et Or Kitov, that God saw the light to be good. And in the context of that verse, the word good means beautiful. God did not see the light to be ethically, and which we could say that it's ethically good. In general, good is something which is moral or ethical. But the fact that God saw the light to be good means that it was beautiful in his eyes. It was likely, it was comely, it was lovely. in the eyes of the Creator. And then throughout the story of creation, everything that Hashem creates in the sixth day of creation, it's the statement reads, the phrase reads, Vayara Elokim ki tov, that God saw that it was good. It means that it found favor in His eyes. At the end of all of creation, at the end of the sixth day, after man was created, so it says that God saw everything that He has created, and it was very good. When we reach the shiur of Yesod, we'll see that one of the meanings of erech, let's go back to our word erech, which means value, in Hebrew, is ma'aracha, which means ordered set of things. When you have a set of many objects, and they're all well ordered, usually they're well ordered for the sake of performing some function. That is called ma'aracha. It can be a ma'aracha, a well-ordered set of men. It can be a well-ordered set of soldiers in an army situation. It can be a well-ordered set of any group, of any objects for any reason. In modern Hebrew, the word for kit, K-I-T, which is a kit in order to do something. The word is erka, which is from the word erech, it's just a different form, it's a different grammatical form of the word ma'aracha, from value. And there's something valuable about a well-ordered set of things. That is the beauty of all of creation. Once more, God looked at everything that He created, which is the most well-ordered set of objects, because it's all of creation. And He saw that it was all very good. Once more, very good is very beautiful in the eyes of God. So we see that that good is beauty. One of the great commentaries on the Torah is the Ramban, Nachmanides. He explains something very fundamental, very deep about the phraseology that repeats itself throughout the story of creation. First it says, Vayomer Elokim, God said such and such. Everything that God created, He created with words, with saying. There are 10 sayings of creation. The first saying, the first explicit saying, is that God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then immediately it says that God saw the light to be good, to be beautiful. And then everything else is that God said such and such had come into being, and then He looked at it and He saw that it was good. How does Nachmanides explain those two phrases that are actually the foundation of the story of creation? He says that saying is bringing something into existence. But seeing it to be good, the word that he uses is called kiyum, keeping it in existence. As we said before, the things which are in a state of chaos enter existence and disappear immediately. If you have light without a vessel, so it just appears and disappears. Sometimes it doesn't even appear in the first place. In order to keep it there, you have to give it a vessel. To give it a vessel, give it a value. And the Ramban, Nachmanides, says that seeing it to be good means that He is keeping it there. Very simple, but a profound understanding. You do something. Every person is doing things all the time. After you do something, you have to decide: should this thing continue to be? Or should I just fold up this particular attempt and try again? So actually even God, it says that before he created our world, he created worlds and he destroyed them. It means that worlds came into existence and left existence. What kind of worlds were those worlds? They were chaotic worlds. Until he reached our world, and he said, this for the first time, this world finds favor in my eyes. I like this world. So what does it mean to like this world? That's what the beauty means. To like this world means let it remain. Not just let it be, let it remain. So that's the way that Nachmanides explains why every creation in the rectified realm is first, he says means let it be, and then he sees it to be good, let it remain. Now for something to remain, it has to be stable. Stability is when you have a balance between right and left. That balance is the middle line, which is Tiferet. Once more, this Sfirah of Tiferet is the goodness of beauty. That we said now several things about this type of goodness. This goodness of beauty is because it is necessary for the continuation of the species, for procreation, and because Tiferet, beauty, is the principle of Jacob in Kabbalah, is continued existence. The first two principles correspond to Abraham and Isaac. It is not yet 100% clear that God wants this people to continue forever. But the seal of continuation, that this is here to be forever, that's Tiferet. That's goodness manifest as beauty. Something which is beautiful, you will want to remain. There's different stories in the Talmud that when someone realized that something beautiful is going to die, he cried. Beauty you want to remain. That's Tiferet. Right now, the next Shirah, I'll try to do them quickly now. The next one is Netzach. In value theory, there's no real concept that corresponds to Netzach, but in the Torah there is. Netzach is Moses himself, Moshe Rabbeinu, in the attributes of the heart. The first three attributes are the fathers, the patriarchs. The fourth is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses gives us the Torah. Moses, our teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu, that phrase equals 613, which are the 613 commandments of the Torah. What is one of the deep understandings of what a commandment is? Why not just say good deeds? There's a term that we use all the time, good deeds, Maasim Tovim. What's special about the fact that Jews live by commandments? Why not just be good? If Rabbi Elazar ben Arak teaches us that the good heart is the all-inclusive good way of life, so just be good. Why do we have to have commandments? It's one of the things that we're taught in Tanya, is that a commandment takes temporal goodness, It's now a little bit of a continuation of the previous thought about the Tiferet. Temporal goodness or extrinsic goodness, and transforms it, the existential transformation or metamorphosis, into eternal goodness. Once more, a commandment, the purpose of a commandment in Torah is to give eternity to goodness. A commandment is above time. This is the way the first Rebbe of Chabad explains what a commandment means in the Torah. It's taking something which is good, but otherwise would be temporal and would be extrinsic, maybe just good for, but not intrinsically good, and giving it eternity. The word netzach, in addition to victory, means eternity. It has two basic meanings. So the power to make good eternal is the netzach principle in our Parsuf, which is something which is very, very unique to Yiddishkeit, to Judaism, to the Torah, because you don't have commandments in other cultures. The next one is Hod. Hod also is a form of beauty, but Hod has to do with the aura. One of the ways that the word Hod is translated is like aura. The aura that appears, we mentioned this term last month in our last class. We asked the question, this is a philosophical question, is a healthy ecosystem good intrinsically? And we said that there's something in the Torah that does seem to point at the fact that nature, there's something essentially good about nature, and that's the verse that we just quoted before. That at the end of creation, God looks at everything they created, he says that he sees that it's very, very good. And just looking at all of the world, all of the created world, and seeing the whole ma'aracha, the whole set of objects, which is called an ecosystem, functioning, operating properly and beautifully, that is good. That impression of nature per se, or creation per se, as being good, reflecting good, very often the word Hod means echo. Hod in Hebrew is head, which is an echo. There's something about nature that echoes goodness. When God looks, he first creates something, then he looks at it and he sees that it's good. What does it mean he sees it? There's something, it's called returning light. There's something that the creation echoes back to God. That is our good, healthy ecosystem. That one of the things it says in the Midrash, that when God put Adam in the Garden of Eden, he said that I have created a beautiful world. Don't mess it up. Don't ruin it. That's a very important saying of the sages in the Midrash. So that realization that the world is beautiful, don't mess it up, that's a Hod concept. The next concept that corresponds with Yesod, the Sfirah of Yesod, is not just the order of a set of objects, but the order of the temporal order, what comes first and what comes second. And we also mentioned this point last time, but we didn't elaborate upon it, that philosophers, this just simple linguistics, speak of good and better and best. The opposite is bad and worse and worst. I mean, there are three stages to good. First, you're good, then you have to not suffice with simply being good, try to become better. It's a famous expression in Yiddish that the Rebbe would always quote. If good, is better not better? But even if you're better, there's a third thing to strive for. There's best. Try to be the best. So there are 3 stages. The fact that there is order to goodness, that is a yesod. That's one of the properties of the Sfira of Yesod. Yesod gives order to reality or to different concepts. There are 2 ways to understand this order. Both the positive order of good, better, and best, and the negative order of bad, worse, and worst. One is based on a very, very fundamental question in ethics, studying the Torah, which we touched upon it before. Can a person be a good person without believing in God? People will come and say, you will try to teach Torah to people who are not yet identified with Torah. And so someone will say, but I'm a good person, I have a good heart, I do good things, I help people. What is the relation, what is the dependency of goodness, of being good, and believing in God? One stage more is, does goodness require believing in the Torah? Because just like in the principles of faith of the Rambam, believing in God is one thing, believing in the Torah is another thing. There are different sayings of the Alter Rebbe which are quoted in a little book called Hayom Yom, a statement of Chassidut that pertains to every day of the year. That says that people think that morality or ethics and the Torah, the precepts of the Torah, the commandments of the Torah are not necessarily the same thing. But the truth is not so. The truth is that to really be good, you can't really be good without the Torah. You can't really be good without believing it. This is a tremendous innovation. It's most important. We're now trying to reach out, not just to the Jewish world. There are many, many Jews also have this problem, but to the whole world. So to be able to understand ourselves, even for me to understand it, to be able to explain why you can't be best without believing in God and believing in the Torah and following the Word of God and Torah. It's not something obvious at all. So what are we actually saying? Try to make it in short. Maybe someone will ask further elaboration. That in truth, I have to think that it's possible, it's definitely possible for a human being to be good, altruistic, without conscious faith in God. But that is just good. To be better, which means to be better in your altruism. To be better, you have to believe in God. But to be best, you have to believe in the Torah and follow the Torah. And once more, that's being best in the altruism itself, in the goodness itself. How can we translate that to the negative side? Bad, worse, and worst. A person can believe in God and believe in the Torah and do all of the Shulchan Aruch and be bad. So unfortunately, that is the truth. So if you can be bad, even if you believe in God, and you believe in the Torah and do the Torah, So what is worse? If you're bad, stay bad. Don't get worse. You can't believe in the Torah if you don't believe in God. You can do it by rote, but to actually believe in it, to believe in the Torah means that it's God-given. If it's God-given, there must be God. But you can believe in God and not believe in the Torah, as many people do. So what is worse, what's bad, is that you believe in both and you're still bad. What is worse? That you don't believe in the Torah. So that makes you worse. What is worst? That you also don't believe in God. But this is the foundation of true ethics. The relation between goodness and faith. And it gives order to ethics. As we said, that there's good and there's better and there's best. There's another whole way to understand what good, better, best is that we'll leave it maybe for next time. The last one, just in order to complete, the last shiur is Malchut. Malchut is the kingdom, it's called the sea, the ocean that receives all the waters from all of the sfirot, all of the channels of divine influx above it. Relative to ethics, it corresponds to one of the modern theories of ethics, which is called utilitarianism, which is a form of consequentialism, but it's not consequential alone. And what it preaches is that there's no intrinsic good, as most modern philosophers will say, but that it's not hedonistic in the sense that we explained last time, that it's simply seeking pleasure in life, but it's saying that good is the maximal pleasure of all things, all people, and all things in the world. It means to be good, you have to be good for yourself and for everybody else, and for everything else in the world. It means that all the goods all have to come together and be balanced, and that's good. And if it's not, it can be measured in a certain way. If your goodness is not total, not universal, it's not really good. You have to strive. It's called the ultimate concept of utilitarianism, that the maximal good, which is the maximal pleasure, it's going back to, it's like hedonism. But it's not particular, it's totally, the word that was used originally by these philosophers is simply happiness. That good is everybody is happy. Whatever makes everybody happy is good. And if it doesn't make everybody happy, it's not good. And that's the whole story. There's nothing more, nothing less, and nothing more than that. So that sounds pretty good. But what's the flaw in that? We also seek flaws. The flaw is very simple, that there's one important factor which is missing from the formula, from the equation. Once more, the equation is reaching an equation that everybody is happy. But what's the problem? The problem is, what about God? Is God also happy? That's the whole thing. If in the formula you include God, then you have Malchut Shamayim. you have the kingdom of heaven. The truth is God wants everybody to be happy. That's why he created the world. Everyone should be happy, but he also has to be happy. So that is the Malchut. That's the happiness, that's the goodness of Malchut, that everyone, including God, is happy. Okay, so this was today's class. Now we can take questions. There were still many, many things that we didn't preach, and the Mirza Hashem will continue this the next time.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Ginsburgh. Again, this class is dedicated from Aliyat Neshama for Rabbi Yitzhak Eliezer Ben Yehuda Leib Halevi. Should have an Aliyat Neshama. For those who came in late or who tuned in late, next month, in July, the class is not the first Sunday of the month because of the fast day of Yud Zayin B'Tammuz. It will be July 8th, the second Sunday of the month. Please mark your calendar, Chav Hei Tammuz. Also, we do have a book of the month. It's called Ahava, Smicha Takesher Ben Ish Be'isha. This book is only 45 shekel. For those who are here, it's available at the back table. And for those who want to order online, it's a special for the month. Don't pass it up. Okay, before we get to all kinds of questions, everyone has been waiting since the beginning of the shiur to hear the story of Elazar ben Arach and the connection to being a Baal Tshuva.
Of all of the disciples of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was the outstanding, we'll call it the brightest of them all, the most innovating of them all. He's called Oker Harim. He uproots mountains with his innovations and thoughts in the Torah. The difference between him and the first, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonos, that the Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonos is called Sinai, that he was the most knowledgeable in all of the sources, and all of the teaching, the traditions that were passed down from generation to generation. Sinai means the mountain itself, but the ability to uproot mountains and grind mountains and create new mountains, that's a different intellectual property. Without the original mountain, you can't do anything. So that's why the sages themselves ask which attribute is more important. And the answer is that the Sinai itself has to first be there. Otherwise you have no basic material to delve into and to uproot and recreate and innovate. What is the problem with a soul that is totally an innovator? Obviously he's learned and he knows the sources, because otherwise he can't innovate. But he can forget. And that's exactly what happened to Elazar ben Arach. After the mentor, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, passed away, as long as he was alive, all of his 5 disciples were sitting at his feet day and night. When he passed away, the other 4 remained in the city of Yavne, which he had received from the Caesar before the destruction of the Second Temple. But this one last disciple, Elazar ben Arach, actually because of his wife, decided that he's going to leave the other sages, and he's going to go to a resort city that has the best air and the best water and the best fruit in Israel, with the hope that all of his friends will come after him. So he's having like the best physical life possible, is what his wife wanted, to live in this particular place. And at a certain point, he saw that his friends were not coming to be with him. So he's alone. It's not good to be alone. You have to learn Torah together with companions. So he asked his wife what to do, and she said, she gave a parable. If there are food and mice, who comes to whom? The food goes to the mice, or the mice go to the food? So she said, you're the food, and they're the mice. So they have to come to you, not vice versa. So he stayed there until he forgot everything. The good fruit. He was in the best, most healthy ecosystem in the world. And what it resulted in is that he forgot the whole Torah. At one point, he came back to his friends in Yavne when there was called a gathering of many hundreds, thousands of people to hear the Torah, and they honored him to read from the Torah, and he had forgotten so much that he misread 3 simple words. It says, "HaChodesh hazeh lachem." This month is for you the first month of the year, Nisan. It's the beginning of the Exodus. Instead of reading it, HaChodesh hazeh lachem, he made 3 mistakes. Instead of HaChodesh, which means the month, he read it HaCheresh, means deaf. Instead of Hazeh, this, he read it Haya, was. Instead of Lachem, to you, he read it Libam, their heart. Instead of this is the month for you, the first month, he read it, their heart was deaf. At that point, the whole congregation, everybody there, simple Jews, they understood that they totally didn't know how to read the Torah anymore. So, and they knew how great a sage he was before it. So they all started to cry. The whole congregation cried, and he cried. Then it either said there are 2 versions. One version reads that his friends prayed for him and asked mercy from heaven, and all of his wisdom came back to him. Or, according to a different version, it says that Elijah the prophet came and returned to him all of his forgotten wisdom. Right now, in order to understand this properly, we have to say 2 things. First of all of the 5 students of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was the one that excelled more than all of them in the midst. Not only was he an innovator in the revealed dimension of the Torah, he was the one unique sage that delved into the mysteries of the Torah, which is called the workings of creation, even more so the workings of the divine chariot. And he was the one that revealed the secrets and mysteries of the divine chariot to this in the lifetime of his mentor. And when he spoke and revealed these secrets to his mentor, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai says, before we talked about angels, all the angels of heaven came down and all of the trees in the forest all begin to burn, not to burn up, but to be full of fire and light. And one of the angels said that true, what you're teaching is true. And then Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, the mentor, said, "Happy are you, Abraham, the first Jew, the first father of our nation. Happy are you that from you came out this son." There's no such story in the whole Talmud. I mean, that he not only was the greatest innovator, but he was the one that delved into all the deepest secrets of the Torah and revealed them. And from heaven itself, it says that his revelations were true. And then he goes on to this very weird story of once more nature. He got into nature trip, and because of that nature trip, he forgot the whole Torah. So again, this is the way it's explained in Chassidut, that this is part of his rectification of his soul. He's a very, very general and great soul, that he had to forget it all in order to do tshuva, to come to even higher level, higher than all of those things that we said before. Now, in order to understand this, we have to say, we said that there was another way to understand order, which is Yesod, the tzaddik. The second way is that these three levels of order, which are good, better, and best, correspond to a most important concept in Kabbalah and Chassidut, which is called Nikuda Kavsheta, point, line, and area, or in parallel terminology, point, sphira. A sphira is a point that already has manifest in it 10 points. And Parzuf. Parzuf is a whole figure, a persona that has 613 limbs to it. Means each level adds a different dimension. Now, without explaining at great length, the second stage of this process is always in a state of danger of breaking. To understand this simply, if you're good, you're good. If you want to be better, you don't suffice. Before we said that everybody, the Rebbe says, no, you shouldn't suffice being good. If good is good, better isn't better. But there's something dangerous about being better. Just like even in finances. If you made so much money, that's good. But the sages say that if you're really into making money, you don't suffice with how much you made. Because a person that has 100 wants 200. If you have 200, you want 400. As soon as you make the next step to be better, you're placing yourself into danger. That the whole thing can break and collapse, bankruptcy. That is the essence of a soul of Baal Tshuva, that he has, in order to become best, you have to go through a stage which is better. And to be better is dangerous. And that's exactly the three stages that happened to Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. He was good. He was very, very good. He was relatively the best. But for him, that was just good. He wants to become better. In nature, he wanted to become better. But the becoming better, the second stage of Yesod, caused a collapse. And then he had to do tshuva. He had to cry, and everybody had to cry together with him. And his friends asked for mercy, and Elijah came. What does it mean that Elijah came? It means that there was some messianic process here. Elijah comes in order to bring the tidings of the Mashiach for him. And then it came back to him. Then he became best. Right, so that's part of the story of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach.
Okay, before we get to other questions, there's another question that you were hoping someone would ask. And I think it's something that we've all experienced and probably bothers us, is when confronted with someone who will give the benefit of the doubt, who appears to believe in God and appears to be doing the whole Torah, but simply is not a mensch. So it seems a bit oxymoronic, because if ein tov ela Torah, if there's no goodness but Torah, and someone is believing in Torah and doing the Torah, how does it work that someone ends up not being a mensch?
Well, it's very simple. He has not integrated what he's learned. It's all chisoniyut. But in order to explain this, we'll go back to actually the very highest level that we discussed last time, to the highest level of the crown, which is that philosophy that says that good is being. If it is, it's good. If it's good, it is. Being is obviously Hashem. His name, the very name, the tetragrammaton means being, means absolute being. What does the Torah have to say about that? Is everything that is it automatically good because it is? So we a little bit touched upon this last time, but in order to explain this, we'll say more. The truth is that everything in reality has pnimiyut v'chitzoniyut, has an inner dimension and an outer dimension. An internal dimension and an external dimension. The inner core of everything that is good. But God created the world that everything has an inner core. That inner core is called the fruit, the pri. One of the simple words in Hebrew that equals erech, 290, is the word pri, fruit. Everything in the world has an inner core, which is the fruit. But God created everything with shells around it, husks. Actually, there are 4 different shells. In order to reach the fruit, you have to penetrate through 4 shells. The most important command of the whole Torah is uvacharta b'chaim. Choose that I have given before you today life and death, good and evil. Choose life. The way that phrase is interpreted in Hasidut is that everything that you see, everything that is, I have given before you in everything, life and death, good and evil. Choose life. What does it mean? Choose life. Penetrate through the death and through the evil until you reach the life and the good. Because in everything there is an inner core of life and good. It's just that our service is to reach it. That's called pnimiyut. Pnimiyut is good. That's also one of the very beautiful gematria, that the word pnimiyut together with good equals 613, the number of mitzvot in the Torah. So I already don't remember what you had, but I think there was an answer to it.
Okay, here's a question from Brandon Ashing in Crestview, Florida. I'm just going to paraphrase it. Very interesting question. He said when the person came to Shammai and Hillel and asked to be taught the whole Torah on one foot, was he talking about him standing on one foot, or Shammai or Hillel standing on one foot? And what would be the difference between the two?
Because the way that I understand it, that he was standing on one foot. He wants to be able to stand on one foot and to hear the whole Torah from...
Okay, a question from Angela in Wanatchee, Washington. She asks that you said that when God, in creation, when God sees something, that is what keeps it alive. Is that the reason Hashem is continually recreating the world every moment, because he sees this world and us as good?
Okay, every moment God is creating the world means that he's both re-saying the saying. So the saying of creation is a continual process, and that saying brings the thing into existence from nothing. So every instant things do return to nothing, but are spontaneously recreated to the extent that we don't see the nothing. And then God sees it to be good and makes it remain. Like it says David, the most important phrase of something remaining is David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam. David, the king of Israel, is alive and remaining. The word is Kayam. But David is also continuously dying and being reborn. So at the same time, he's being recreated, and at the same time, we say that he is continuing, he's going on. That cycle is an eternal cycle. It's continuing forever and ever. Chai v'kayam. So that Chai v'kayam, that he's alive and continuing, is the seeing that he is good. Even he himself, King David, when he is first described in the Bible, he's described as Tov Ro'i. Tov Ro'i means good of sight. That he is good of sight. But just like he is good of sight actually does mean that if you see him, you see good. He's called Tov Ro'i. So also when God sees him, he sees good. And so he wants him to remain. And that's why he remains. David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam.
Okay, I have a related question. Based on what you just said about recreation, in this shiur you mentioned a number of times the idea that light without vessel doesn't last. It's tohu, it comes and it immediately disappears. So can you take that concept and explain, because in physics today, there is this, it's a relatively new discovery, the idea of virtual particles that are coming in and out of existence in less than a billionth of a second, and they seem to be animating the whole fabric of reality. So what is the purpose of this if this light has no vessel? It seems to be a light without a vessel. So where is its place in creation and recreation?
Okay, you just said it yourself. If you use the word, the word that they're using now in modern physics, fabric of, you say that this process has to do with the fabric of the universe. So it means that it's a background potential is real, a state of being, that things are coming into existence and leaving. That's exactly what when I said it before, that's exactly what I was thinking of these particles. That those virtual particles are tohu. Tohu is here. Tohu is with us. It's called a makiv. It's a surrounding background that we have to, little by little, bring it into consciousness. Consciousness is already kelim, vessels. There's tremendous energy. It's necessary for the universe. But it's a God saying, but not seeing. Apparently, it takes a split second before you say something and look at it, and these things just go out of existence before that split second takes place. So he's saying, he's not seeing it to be good. And he knows what he's doing. God knows exactly what he's doing. So it's necessary that some things are said and don't really happen in the sense of continued existence. We say a lot of things that don't happen.
That's for sure. So if I can, just take it one step further, because Sefer Yetzirah posits the dimensions of Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. And Einstein put together Olam and Shana. And now physics is coming to the idea of consciousness, the role of consciousness. So it seems that if the Ora Makif is Tohu, so it's our job, our purpose, our tafkid to make a vessel through our consciousness that these lights, which in potential are phenomenally powerful and pure, to remain, because we want to make a vessel for the light. So it's our consciousness that is needed in order to take these virtual particles and to make them real.
Okay, that's revealing our feminine side. It's Kelima is feminine. The males just go in and out of existence, but the females remain.
Okay, questions from people here? Yeah.
Inundation disaster in the river in the Harav. We have to think that all these Jews were killed, as we see that innocently, we have to think that they are bad. Because they don't exist. But Hashem decided that they won't exist in such a very tragic way that for us, we can't see what's good in that. You can't see their blame and their guilt in that.
Okay, this is a very hard question. In virtue and value, how do we deal with tragedies, disasters, where people are taken away? How do we relate to that as good and bad, existing, not existing, virtue and value?
That's asking about God, what God does. There are the hidden levels, that the very best things come from hidden levels that appears to be bad. That's what it is. Several chapters in Tanya that explain that the apparent bad things come from a very high good source, but in our world we just don't once more have the vessels to see that it's good. In the world to come, we'll see that it's all pretty good.
Any questions? Yeah.
You mentioned about Rabbi Eliezer from intonation, but he was the greatest understand that Elohim is in nature. So what was he thinking? Going to separate from the community and go into nature instead of must have been thinking the good that he was going to see Hashem a certain way.
That's what we said before. He was trying to become better. He was already good and he wanted to become better. He hoped, once more it says explicitly that he hoped that all of his friends would follow him.
Any other questions?
One more.
One more question. Yes.
It's kind of a little bit off topic, but I'm just wondering, is it logical to assume that just like we are here, this world, in Syria, would it be logical to assume that there were people, humans, in a higher, let's say, above us, Syria? Is there a concept of human life in higher realms? Physical bodies, corporeal bodies, deeds, things.
Okay. As the person asking the question said, it's a little bit off topic, but it's the last question of the night, so it's the cherry on the cake, is when we talk about the four Kabbalistic worlds, is there a concept of human beings or physical human beings existing in the higher worlds of Yetzirah, Bria, Atzilut?
There's no physicality in the higher worlds, but everything that exists here, this table has its source in the higher worlds. Everything. It's just it's spiritual. It's not physical. All of the worlds, even above Bria, even in Atzilut, everything, it's there. It's not there physically, but it's there. If our soul would be there, we would see the trees and the grass and the tables and the chairs and everything in all of the worlds.
Okay, we're going to call it an evening. Remember, second Sunday of July, the next class, July 8th, and book of the month, especially for the people here, 45 shekels, and you can order it online. Erev Tov, everyone.